During my stepson's promotion ceremony, my 8-year-old daughter squeezed my hand so hard her little nails dug into my palm. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling, "can we leave?" I looked down at her surprised. "Why, sweetheart?" She didn't answer. She only shook her head and stared across the room past the rows of pressed uniforms, polished shoes, and proud family members standing beneath the American flag. Her face had gone pale. That was the first moment I knew something was wrong, but it would not be until we were back in the car 30 minutes later that she finally whispered the words that turned my blood cold. "Mom, you didn't see what Grandma did you? My name is Clare Whitaker, and by then I had learned not to make scenes. I was 32 years old, married to a man named Robert, and stepmother to his son Daniel, who had just earned one of the biggest honors of his young army career. Daniel was 26, tall, serious, and proud in the way young soldiers often are when they are trying to prove they belong among older men. He was not cruel to me, not exactly, but he had never called me family. To him I was simply the woman his father married after his mother died. Robert's mother, Evelyn, made sure everyone remembered that. Evelyn Whitaker was the kind of woman who could smile at you in church while cutting you open with one sentence. She wore pearls to breakfast, never raised her voice, and believed grief gave her permission to rule everyone around her. From the day Robert introduced me, she looked at me as if I had stolen a chair at a table where I did not belong. "You're very young," she told me the first time we met. I smiled politely. "I've been told that before." Her eyes dropped to the small service pin on my blouse. "Army?" "Yes, ma'am." She gave a tiny laugh. "Well, I suppose everybody needs a chapter." That was Evelyn, sweet as iced tea on the surface, bitter underneath. I had served 6 years as an Army logistics officer before a convoy accident overseas ended that part of my life. I came home with a limp that showed up in cold weather, a folder full of medical paperwork, and one small velvet case I rarely opened. Nist inside was my Bronze Star. I never bragged about it. I never wore it around the house. But that morning for Daniel's promotion ceremony, Robert asked me to bring it. "It might mean something to him," he said while nodding his tie. "Seeing that you served too, I wanted to believe him, so I tucked the case into my purse and drove to the ceremony with our daughter Lily, buckled in the back seat, humming along to an old country song on the radio. When we arrived, Evelyn was already there. She kissed Robert's cheek. She hugged Daniel. Then she glanced at me and Lily. "Oh," she said, "you came." I held my smile. We wouldn't miss it. For the first half of the ceremony, everything looked beautiful. The flags, the uniforms, the quiet pride on Daniel's face. Even Evelyn dabbed her eyes with a folded tissue when his name was called. Then Lily squeezed my hand. "Mom, can we leave?" I should have listened. Instead, I whispered, "Just a few more minutes," and across the aisle, Evelyn Whitaker smiled like she had already won. No one noticed Lily's fear, not Robert, not Daniel, certainly not Evelyn. The ceremony flowed into handshakes, photographs, and congratulations as if nothing had happened. Officers greeted Daniel with broad smiles, while families gathered beneath the flag for pictures they would proudly frame on living room walls. I kept glancing down at my daughter. She stood close enough that her shoulder brushed mine, her small hand still wrapped around my fingers. Normally, Lily loved military ceremonies. She thought the uniforms looked like something from an old movie, and she never missed a chance to salute anyone wearing stars on their shoulders. Today, she wouldn't even look up. "Honey," I whispered, kneeling beside her, "are you feeling sick?" She shook her head. "Did somebody say something to you?" Another shake. Before I could ask again, Robert called from across the room. "Clare family picture." I forced a smile. "We're coming." Daniel stood proudly in the center, his fresh rank shining beneath the overhead lights. Robert wrapped an arm around his son's shoulder. Evelyn immediately stepped to Daniel's other side before I had a chance. "There," she said brightly. "That's perfect." The photographer looked at me. "And you, ma'am, would you like to step in?" Before I answered, Evelyn smiled. "Oh, Claire can stand with little Lily on the end. It'll look more natural." Natural, such an innocent word, yet somehow it always left me feeling like a guest in my own family. I said nothing. At my age, Evelyn should have known better. At mine, I had learned that not every insult deserved an answer. The flash went off 3 times. Daniel thanked everyone for coming. People slowly drifted toward the reception hall, where coffee, cookies, and sandwiches waited. Robert stayed busy introducing Daniel to retired officers. I watched father and son laughing together. Part of me was genuinely happy for them. The other part wondered whether either of them had noticed Lily hadn't smiled once all afternoon. When it was finally time to leave, Robert walked us to the parking lot. "You girls head home," he said. "Daniel wants me to stay for another hour." "Of course." He kissed my forehead. Then Lily. "Everything okay, Peanut?" She forced the smallest nod I'd ever seen. Robert smiled, completely convinced. "I'll be home before dinner." As he walked away, I looked back toward the building. Through the glass entrance doors, I caught a glimpse of Evelyn. She wasn't talking to anyone. She was watching us. The moment our eyes met, she smiled. Not warmly, not proudly. It was the satisfied smile of someone who believed a game had already been won. A chill ran through me, though I couldn't explain why. The drive home was unusually quiet. Normally, Lily filled every car ride with questions. Today, she stared out the passenger side window, hugging her backpack against her chest. I turned off the radio. "Sweetheart?" Silence. "You scared me back there." She kept watching the passing trees. "I promise you won't get in trouble," I said gently. Still nothing. The miles slipped by. Finally, I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. Neither of us moved. The silence inside the cars felt heavier than the summer air outside. Then, Lily slowly turned toward me. Tears filled her eyes. Her tiny voice barely rose above a whisper. "Mom." She swallowed hard. "You didn't see what Grandma did you?" Every muscle in my body tightened. I reached for her hand. "What are you talking about?" She looked toward the house to make sure we were alone. Then she leaned closer. "I saw Grandma open your purse. I saw Grandma open your purse." For a second I thought I'd misheard her. "My purse?" I repeated softly. Lily nodded. When everyone started clapping for Daniel, she picked it up. I frowned. "Are you sure?" I watched because I thought maybe she was looking for tissues. Lily's voice trembled. But she wasn't. "What did she do?" My daughter took a shaky breath. She opened the little zipper on the side. "Then she took out your blue velvet box." Every drop of color drained from my face. The blue velvet box? There was only one thing I carried in a blue velvet box. My bronze star. I stared at Lily, hoping she would suddenly say she'd made a mistake. Instead, she whispered. She looked around first. My heart pounded. And then she put it in her purse. I sat frozen behind the steering wheel. "Did she see you?" Lily slowly nodded. She looked right at me. "What happened then?" She smiled. Lily wiped away a tear. She put her finger over her lips like this. My daughter raised one tiny finger to her mouth. She wanted me to keep it a secret. I felt sick. There had to be another explanation. Maybe Evelyn had mistaken the case for something else. Maybe she'd borrowed it. Maybe even as those excuses ran through my mind, another voice reminded me that Evelyn had never once shown the slightest interest in my military service. Why would she suddenly touch something she knew belonged to me? I forced myself to stay calm. "Come inside, sweetheart." We walked into the house together. The silence felt almost unbearable. I set my purse on the kitchen counter. My hands shook as I opened the zipper. Wallet, phone charger, lip balm, notebook, car keys. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. The velvet case was gone. I searched every pocket, then I searched again. I emptied the entire purse onto the counter. Receipts scattered across the granite. Pens rolled onto the floor. Nothing. The case had disappeared. I leaned against the counter, trying to steady my breathing. Mere Lily stood quietly nearby. "I'm sorry, Mom." I immediately pulled her into my arms. "No, sweetheart, you've done nothing wrong." She buried her face against my shoulder. "I didn't know if I should tell you." "You absolutely should." I was scared Grandma would be mad. "I know." After a long moment, I kissed the top of her head. "I'm proud of you." That evening, Robert came home carrying a bakery box. "They had Daniel's favorite chocolate cake," he said cheerfully. "We're celebrating." He stopped when he saw my face. "Everything okay?" I looked at him. "My bronze star is missing." His smile faded. "What?" "I had it this morning." "So, where is it?" "I don't know," Lily quietly spoke up. "I saw Grandma take it." Robert looked from Lily to me, then he sighed. "Claire." The disappointment in his voice hurt more than I expected. "Lily's only 8. I know. Kids misunderstand things." "I watched her," Lily insisted. Robert knelt beside her. Honey, Grandma loves you. I know, she wouldn't steal. Lily looked down at the floor. I know what I saw. Robert stood. I'm sure there's another explanation. Like what? I asked. Maybe it fell out. It was inside a zipped compartment. Maybe you left it at home. I packed it myself. He rubbed his forehead. Let's not accuse my mother without proof. There it was. Not anger, not denial. Just the familiar instinct to protect Evelyn first. I didn't argue. Not because I believed him. Because I suddenly realized something much more important. If Evelyn had taken my medal, she had done it believing no one would ever question her. And people who think they'll never be questioned usually make mistakes. I intended to find hers. The next morning, I called the community center, where Daniel's promotion ceremony had been held. After being transferred twice, a cheerful woman named Melissa answered. Good morning. Fort Harrison Events Office. Hi, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This may sound like an unusual question, but was yesterday's ceremony recorded? It was. My pulse quickened. By security cameras and by our media team. I glanced toward Lily, who was quietly eating cereal at the kitchen table. I think something important may have happened during the ceremony. Melissa's voice immediately became more serious. Was someone hurt? No. Was there a disturbance? Not exactly. I hesitated. My military medal disappeared while we were there. There was a brief silence. I'm sorry to hear that. I was wondering if anyone could review the footage. We'd need approval from the installation's public affairs office. Family members can't access the recordings directly. I understand. She gave me the number. I thanked her and hung up. It wasn't much, but it was a start. By noon, I'd spoken with public affairs, who politely explained that official ceremony footage focused almost entirely on the stage. Meaty. If there was activity in the audience, the officer said it may not have been captured. Still, he agreed to review the video and call me back. I appreciated that more than he probably realized. Late that afternoon, my phone rang. Mrs. Whitaker? Yes. This is Captain Lewis. I straightened in my chair. We reviewed the ceremony footage. And I'm afraid the audience isn't clearly visible. My heart sank, but I held my breath. There is one moment where your mother-in-law appears to be holding what looks like a handbag. My handbag? We can't confirm that. So, you can't tell what she was doing? No, ma'am. It wasn't enough. Not even close. After hanging up, frustration washed over me. For the first time since yesterday, doubt tried to creep in. What if Robert was right? What if Lily had misunderstood? Children sometimes confused what they saw. Maybe. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Standing outside was a gray-haired gentleman wearing a volunteer badge from the ceremony. Mrs. Whitaker? Yes. My name's Harold Benson. I recognized him. He'd been helping families find their seats before the ceremony. I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all. He held his cap awkwardly in both hands. I heard someone asking questions about yesterday. I don't know whether this matters. My heartbeat quickened, but I remember your mother-in-law. What about her? She asked me if I'd seen the ladies' room. I frowned. Was she carrying anything? Your purse? I froze. My purse? Yes. I thought maybe you'd asked her to hold it. No. He looked uncomfortable. I actually joked with her. What did you say? I told her. He smiled sadly. Ma'am, your daughter forgot her purse, and she corrected me. My stomach tightened. What did she say? Harold looked me straight in the eye. She said, she's not my daughter. The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were new. I'd heard Evelyn distance herself from me before, but this time, she'd been holding my purse while making sure a complete stranger knew I wasn't family. Harold continued quietly. I remember it because, well, he shrugged. It seemed like an odd thing to say. I thanked him for coming. After he left, I stood at the living room window for a long time. His visit hadn't proven Evelyn stole my medal, but it proved something else. She'd had my purse. Exactly where Lily said she'd had it. Exactly when my medal disappeared. For the first time, I wasn't chasing a child's memory anymore. I was following facts, and somewhere along that trail, Evelyn Whitaker had made a mistake she didn't even realize she'd made. That night, after Lily was asleep, I carried an old storage box down from the hall closet. It was one of those plain plastic containers every family seems to have filled with things too important to throw away, but too painful to look through very often. Robert walked into the living room just as I lifted the lid. What are you doing? I want to see exactly what's missing." He leaned against the doorway, still wearing the same expression he'd had since the night before, half concerned, half convinced I was chasing the wrong problem. "I still think there's another explanation." I didn't answer. Instead, I carefully removed a faded army binder, several photo albums, and a stack of military records I'd kept since leaving active duty. The velvet metal case had never been stored alone. It had always been part of something much larger. As I sorted through the paperwork, I realized one folder was missing, not misplaced, gone. I checked the box again, then the bookshelf, then my desk drawer. Finally, I sat back on the carpet. "It's not here." Robert frowned. "What isn't?" "The deployment file." "The what?" "The file that went with the medal." He looked confused. "I thought you only lost the Bronze Star, so did I." I reached for an old photograph. It showed me standing beside a convoy in Kuwait, wearing dusty boots and an exhausted smile. Tucked behind the picture should have been a thick envelope containing copies of my deployment orders, the recommendation for my Bronze Star witness statements, and a handwritten letter from the battalion commander who had nominated me. None of it was there. Robert's expression slowly changed. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying whoever took the medal also took the paperwork." He pulled out a chair. "But why?" "That's exactly what I intend to find out." For the first time since this nightmare began, Robert looked genuinely unsettled. A missing medal could be explained away. Misplaced, borrowed, lost. But military records? That was something entirely different. The next morning I drove to the County Veterans Resource Center. The receptionist, an older Marine veteran named Carol, recognized me immediately. "Claire, it's been too long." We exchanged a quick hug before I explained why I'd come. "I need certified copies of my service records." She looked surprised. "Did something happen?" "I hope not." Carol typed quietly for several minutes. "You're lucky," she said. "Most of your records were digitized years ago." Relief washed over me. "So I can replace them." "Most of them." She hesitated. "What can't be replaced?" "The handwritten recommendation letter?" I looked up. "It wasn't part of your official personnel file." "It wasn't?" "No." She clicked through another screen. "The commander wrote that personally for you. It was returned to you after your award ceremony." My stomach tightened. That letter wasn't valuable because of money. It was valuable because it was unique. There was only one original. Carol printed several forms. As she handed them to me, she smiled gently. "Those papers tell part of your story," I nodded. "They do, but they aren't your service." I tried to smile back. "I know." On the drive home, her words stayed with me. She was right. No one could erase what I'd done, but someone had clearly tried to erase the proof. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I wasn't thinking about a stolen medal anymore. I was thinking about intent. Someone hadn't wanted to take a keepsake. Someone had wanted to rewrite my history, and that realization frightened me far more than the theft itself. 3 days passed before I spoke to Evelyn. Not because I was afraid of her, because I wanted every conversation from that point forward to be based on facts instead of emotions. By Thursday afternoon, I had plenty of questions. Robert agreed to drive with me to his mother's house. The entire trip he kept repeating the same sentence. "Let's not turn this into something it isn't." I stared out the passenger window. "I'd love nothing more," he sighed. "My mother has always been difficult." "Difficult?" "She's stubborn." I almost laughed. Stubborn people refuse to change restaurants. Stubborn people insist on using paper maps instead of GPS. Evelyn had spent 6 years reminding me that I would never replace Daniel's mother. That wasn't stubbornness. That was a choice. Her little white house looked exactly as it always had. Perfect flower beds, freshly swept porch, American flag waving beside the front steps. If a stranger had driven past, they would have thought a sweet grandmother lived there. In many ways, one did. Evelyn volunteered at church. She baked pies for veterans' fundraisers. She remembered every birthday. She also knew exactly how to wound someone without ever raising her voice. She welcomed us inside with a smile. "Robert." She hugged her son, Claire. A polite nod. No hug, nothing unusual. I made coffee. We sat around her dining room table. For several minutes she chatted about Daniel's promotion, neighbors, church events, and the weather. Finally, I interrupted. My Bronze Star disappeared at the ceremony. The room became very quiet. Evelyn slowly lifted her coffee cup. "I'm sorry to hear that." So am I. I hope you find it. I think I know where it went. She looked at me over the rim of her cup. Oh. Lily saw someone take it. Robert shifted uncomfortably beside me. Evelyn set her cup down. Children imagine things. Lily doesn't. Evelyn smiled. They're all imaginative at that age. I held her eyes. She specifically said she saw you open my purse. For the first time all afternoon, Evelyn's smile disappeared. Only for a second, then it returned. That's quite an accusation. It's a question. No, it's both. Robert cleared his throat. Mom. She ignored him. Instead, she looked directly at me. You've always wanted this. I blinked. Wanted what? A reason. A reason for what? To make me the villain. I stared at her. I've spent 6 years trying to avoid conflict. She folded her hands neatly. And yet here we are. Something inside me suddenly became very still. This conversation wasn't about the medal anymore. It never had been. It was about resentment. Years of it. As we stood to leave, Evelyn walked us to the front door. Just before I stepped outside, she spoke quietly enough that only I could hear. You know why Daniel never truly accepted you? I turned toward her. She smiled. Because I made sure he never forgot who his real mother was. Then she gently closed the door. The drive home felt longer than usual. Robert stared straight ahead. Neither of us spoke for nearly 10 minutes. Finally, he whispered, I didn't know she'd say something like that. I believe you. But, he swallowed. Maybe I should have noticed it years ago. I looked at the passing trees. So should I. That evening, while sorting through another box of old family papers, I found something I'd completely forgotten. A Christmas card Daniel had written when he was 16. Inside, in awkward teenage handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for never trying to replace my mom." I'd always remembered the first sentence. What I'd forgotten was the second, written underneath in much smaller letters. Grandma says I shouldn't trust you, but I think she's wrong. I read it 3 times, then I quietly closed the card. For the first time, I realized Evelyn's campaign against me hadn't started recently. It had begun the day I entered the Whitaker family, and if she had spent 6 years shaping Daniel's opinion of me, what else had she been quietly shaping all along? I couldn't stop thinking about that Christmas card. For 6 years, I'd believed Daniel had slowly warmed up to me on his own. We'd never been especially close, but we'd learned to coexist. We'd shared Thanksgiving dinners, repaired a fence together one spring, and even laughed over an old fishing story Robert liked to tell. Now I wondered how many opportunities had been stolen before they ever had a chance to grow. Not by Daniel, by Evelyn. The following Monday, my phone rang while I was folding laundry. Mrs. Whitaker? Speaking. My name is Colonel James Hollister, retired. His voice carried the unmistakable confidence of someone who had spent decades giving orders without ever needing to raise it. I was at Daniel's promotion ceremony. My heart skipped. I remember seeing you, I said cautiously. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all. There was a brief pause. I've been debating whether to make this call. I sat down on the edge of the couch. Why? Because I wasn't sure whether what I saw mattered. Every nerve in my body came alive. What did you see? I saw your mother-in-law. I didn't interrupt. During the applause, she stepped away from her seat. Yes. At first I assumed she was headed toward the aisle, but she wasn't. No? He continued. She walked behind the last row of chairs, where very few people were looking. I closed my eyes, picturing the room exactly as it had been. Everyone's attention had been on Daniel. No one would have noticed movement in the back. What happened next? I asked. I saw her remove something from a handbag. My fingers tightened around the phone. Could you tell what it was? No. But I distinctly remember a small blue velvet case. For a moment I couldn't speak. Blue velvet, exactly as Lily had described. I also remember something else. What? She didn't keep it. Every thought in my head stopped. What do you mean? I watched her hand it to another woman. I stood so quickly the laundry basket tipped over. Another woman? Yes. Do you know who she was? I didn't at the time. My heart raced, but I recognized her later. From where? The reception. He cleared his throat. She introduced herself to someone as Margaret Sloane. The name meant nothing to me. I've never heard of her. I hadn't either. So why do you remember it? Because one of the officers standing beside me quietly said. He paused. She's the military memorabilia dealer from Indianapolis. The room suddenly felt much smaller. A dealer? That's right. I thought perhaps she was there because of Daniel's promotion. But now, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. After thanking him, I immediately searched the name online. Within seconds, dozens of results appeared. Margaret Sloan, owner of Sloan Military Collectibles, specializing in historical medals, campaign decorations, military documents, estate collections. Everything inside my missing folder. Everything Evelyn had taken. I leaned back in my chair staring at the screen. This could no longer be dismissed as family drama. If Colonel Hollister's memory was accurate, Evelyn hadn't hidden my medal in a drawer. She'd handed it to someone whose business involved buying and selling military history. Whether money had motivated her or something far more personal, I still didn't know. But for the first time since Lily squeezed my hand at the ceremony, I could finally see the outline of a plan. Someone hadn't simply stolen my past. Someone had tried to put a price on it, and I intended to find out exactly how much they thought my life was worth. I didn't call the police. I didn't call Evelyn. And I certainly didn't drive to Indianapolis looking for Margaret Sloan. If 6 years in the Army had taught me anything, it was this. When you think someone is hiding the truth, don't announce you're looking for it. Let them believe they're safe. The next morning, I called an attorney. Her name was Rebecca Morgan, a former Army JAG officer who now specialized in military fraud and civil litigation. After listening to my story for nearly an hour, she remained silent for a long moment. Finally, she asked one question. Claire, are you looking for revenge or are you looking for the truth? It wasn't the question I expected. I want both, I admitted. Rebecca chuckled softly. Most people say that. I've earned the right. You probably have. Another pause. But only one of those goals usually leads to peace. I leaned back in my chair. So, what do? We don't confront anyone, not even Evelyn, especially not Evelyn. She explained that if Evelyn had truly transferred my medal and military papers to a collectibles dealer, accusing her now would only give her time to destroy evidence. We let everyone continue believing you have no proof. That made sense. So, we wait, we investigate. Within 48 hours, Rebecca had already uncovered something I couldn't. Margaret Sloan wasn't just a collector. She regularly authenticated military awards for museums, estate sales, and private auctions. She kept meticulous records. If my bronze star had crossed her desk, there was a good chance there would be paperwork. Rebecca smiled. People who run legitimate businesses document everything, and dishonest customers usually forget that. For the first time all week, I felt a flicker of hope. 3 days later, Rebecca called again. I found something. What? Margaret remembers your medal. My heart skipped. She does? Very clearly. Did Evelyn sell it? No, that answer surprised me. Then why did she have it? Rebecca hesitated. Margaret says Evelyn wanted an appraisal. An appraisal? Yes. She asked how much your bronze star and supporting documents might be worth. I closed my eyes. It wasn't about honoring Daniel. It wasn't about protecting family memories. She had actually asked someone to put a dollar value on my military service. Rebecca continued. Margaret refused. Why? Because Evelyn couldn't prove ownership. That one sentence changed everything. The dealer hadn't committed a crime. She had done exactly what an ethical professional should do. What happened after that? I asked. The Evelyn left with everything, so the medal never changed hands. Apparently not. Relief washed over me. If Margaret was telling the truth, my medal still existed somewhere. Rebecca's voice grew more serious. I've asked Margaret not to contact Evelyn. Why? Because I don't want Evelyn to know we're asking questions. The strategy was working. As far as Evelyn knew, Robert still believed his mother. She believed Lily's story had been dismissed. She believed I was quietly grieving the loss of a keepsake. She had no reason to suspect that a retired colonel, a respected military dealer, and a former JAG attorney had all become pieces of the same puzzle. That weekend, Daniel invited the family to dinner. Just us, he said over the phone. I want to celebrate without all the ceremony. I agreed immediately. Rebecca had one piece of advice before I left. Go, I plan to. And Clara, yes. Listen more than you talk. Why? Because people who think they've gotten away with something often reveal far more than they intend. For the first time since the promotion ceremony, I wasn't walking into a family gathering hoping to keep the peace. I was walking in, prepared to hear the truth. By the time Robert and I pulled into Daniel's driveway that Saturday evening, the sun was beginning to set behind the rows of maple trees lining his quiet suburban street. His home wasn't extravagant, just a comfortable two-story house outside Louisville, with a neatly trimmed lawn, a basketball hoop over the garage, and an American flag hanging from the front porch. It suited him. Orderly, disciplined, predictable. The smell of grilled steaks drifted through the backyard before we even reached the front door. Daniel greeted us with a broad smile. "Glad you made it." He hugged Robert first, then after a brief hesitation, he gave me an awkward side hug. It wasn't natural, but it was progress. Lily ran straight toward the swing set with two neighborhood children. For the first time in days, I saw her smile. I silently thanked God for that. Inside the kitchen, Evelyn was arranging plates as though she owned the house. She looked up when I walked in. "Claire, Evelyn, you look tired. I haven't been sleeping much." "Oh," she smiled pleasantly. "Stress can do that." I smiled back. "It certainly can." Rebecca's words echoed in my mind. "Listen more than you talk." Dinner began pleasantly enough. Daniel described his new responsibilities. Robert proudly asked questions about his unit. Neighbors laughed over old stories. Every few minutes, Evelyn found a way to steer the conversation. She complimented Daniel, praised Robert, ignored me. It was almost impressive how practiced she'd become. Finally, Daniel looked at me. "Claire, Dad told me you brought your bronze star to the ceremony." "I did. I never got to see it." Before I could answer, Evelyn spoke. "That's unfortunate." Everyone looked toward her. She dabbed her lips with a napkin. Things get misplaced. The table fell quiet. Robert shifted in his chair. Daniel frowned. Evelyn shrugged. "Nothing." I calmly picked up my glass of iced tea. "No," I said softly. "I think you meant something." She smiled again. "I only meant people should be careful with valuable possessions." There it was. Not an apology, not sympathy. A warning wrapped inside polite conversation. Daniel looked confused. "Dad said Claire lost a medal." "I did. I'm sorry." "Thank you." Evelyn leaned back. "Military decorations are sentimental." She paused. "But sentiment doesn't always equal truth." The words landed like a stone in the middle of the table. Robert stared at his mother. "Mom." She waved a hand dismissively. "I'm speaking generally." I met her eyes. "No, you aren't." For the first time all evening her smile faltered. Only slightly, but enough. Daniel looked back and forth between us. "What's going on?" I answered carefully. "My bronze star disappeared during your promotion ceremony." "I know. I've been trying to understand how." Daniel glanced at his grandmother. She reached for her water glass. Her hand trembled. Barely, but I saw it. So did Robert. No one spoke for several long seconds. Then Evelyn laughed. A little too loudly. "Oh goodness." She shook her head. "I suppose next you'll accuse me." The backyard grew strangely quiet. Even the children outside seemed far away. I simply looked at her. "I haven't accused anyone." She blinked. "Then why bring it up?" "Because you did." Another silent. Daniel slowly set down his fork. His expression had changed. For the first time since I'd married his father, I saw uncertainty in his eyes whenever he looked at his grandmother. Not trust, not loyalty, uncertainty. And I realized something important. The cracks weren't appearing because of anything I had said. They were appearing because Evelyn could no longer stop herself from talking. People who carry a lie long enough eventually begin defending it before anyone even asks. I didn't need to trap Evelyn anymore. She had quietly started trapping herself. I barely slept that night. Not because I was angry, because for the first time I believed the truth was finally catching up with Evelyn. Sunday morning my phone rang just after 8. It was Rebecca. "I think we've reached where we stop waiting." I sat up in bed. "What happened?" "Margaret Sloan called me." "The dealer?" "Yes." I immediately reached for a notebook. "What did she say?" "She found something she overlooked." My pulse quickened. "What?" "When your mother-in-law visited her shop, Margaret made photocopies of every document Evelyn brought in." I nearly dropped the phone. "She copied everything." "Standard business practice," Rebecca replied. "She keeps copies before giving authentication opinions." I closed my eyes in relief. "So, the paperwork still exists." "Copies do. And they're enough?" Rebecca didn't hesitate. "They're more than enough." An hour later, Robert and I sat across from Rebecca in her office. She spread several documents across the conference table. There are your deployment orders. I recognized them immediately. My commendation paperwork. Correct. My commander's letter? Rebecca slid the final page toward me. I stared at the familiar handwriting. Colonel Michael Anders, the man who had written those words 20 years earlier after our convoy rescued 3 trapped soldiers during a roadside attack. I hadn't seen that letter in years. Now I was looking at a photocopy. Robert quietly shook his head. I can't believe Mom had all this. Rebecca folded her hands. There's something else. She handed us another sheet. It was Margaret Sloane's intake form. Customer name, Evelyn Whitaker. Purpose of visit, request for appraisal of military medal and accompanying documents. Owner of items. There was a blank line. Margaret had written one sentence beneath it. Customer unable to establish legal ownership. Appraisal declined. Rebecca looked at Robert. Your mother admitted the items weren't hers. He rubbed both hands over his face. I don't understand. I think you do, Rebecca said gently. Robert looked exhausted. I just don't want to. Monday afternoon, Rebecca arranged a meeting with Margaret Sloane. The small military collectible store was exactly what I'd expected. Glass display cases, historic uniforms, flags, old photographs, everything treated with quiet respect. Margaret greeted us warmly. I've been hoping you'd come. She disappeared into a back office before returning with a sealed evidence envelope. I've kept these copies since the ceremony. She laid them carefully on the table. I never contacted the police because I wasn't certain anything illegal had happened. She looked directly at me, but after Rebecca explained the situation, she slid another item toward me. A business card. On the back, written in blue ink, was Evelyn's handwriting. Please don't mention this visit to my family. Robert stared at the card in disbelief. She actually wrote that. Margaret nodded. She seemed nervous. The room fell silent. Rebecca finally spoke. I think we've established intent. Before anyone could say another word, the bell above the shop door rang. A uniformed investigator stepped inside, Mrs. Whitaker. Rebecca stood. Perfect timing. The investigator introduced himself as Special Agent David Morales from the Army Criminal Investigation Division. He wasn't there to arrest anyone. He was there because forged claims involving military awards and service records could have legal consequences. He accepted copies of every document Margaret had preserved. Then he turned to me. Mrs. Whitaker, his expression softened. Thanks to your patience, we now have a complete timeline. As he sealed the evidence envelope, I realized something that surprised me. I no longer cared about revenge. I cared about accountability. There was a difference. And for the first time since Lily whispered those terrifying words in the car, I believed accountability was finally within reach. 2 weeks later, Rebecca called again. They're ready. I knew exactly what she meant. The meeting wasn't at a courthouse. It wasn't at a police station. Nah, it was held inside a conference room at the local Veterans Resource Center, a place dedicated to honoring military service, not humiliating families. That felt appropriate. Present were Rebecca, Special Agent Morales, Margaret Sloane, Robert, Daniel, Evelyn, and me. Lily was at school. I wanted it that way. She had carried enough of this burden already. Evelyn walked in wearing her usual pearls and navy blue blazer. If she was nervous, she hid it well. She sat beside Robert without looking at me. Agent Morales opened a thin file. Mrs. Whitaker, he began looking at Evelyn. Thank you for coming voluntarily. She smiled politely. Of course. He laid several photocopies on the table. I'd like you to explain these. Evelyn glanced down. For the first time since I'd known her, her confidence cracked. She recognized the documents immediately. She looked toward Robert. I can't explain. Robert didn't answer. Margaret quietly slid the business card across the table, the one with Evelyn's handwritten note. Please don't mention this visit to my family. Evelyn closed her eyes. No one spoke. Agent Morales remained calm. We're not accusing you of selling stolen military property. She looked up hopefully. But we do have evidence that you knowingly removed property that did not belong to you. Her shoulders sagged. I wasn't going to sell it. I finally spoke. Then why take it? Tears began filling her eyes. I hated what it represented. The room fell silent. She looked directly at me for the first time. Every time people thanked you for your service, it felt like they were forgetting my daughter. Daniel stared at his grandmother. Grandma, she continued through tears. I couldn't stand hearing people say how brave Claire was. I wasn't trying to erase your daughter, I said quietly. I know that now. Her voice broke, but I couldn't see it then. Robert lowered his head into his hands. I should have stopped this years ago, he looked at me. I'm sorry. I kept asking you to ignore the little comments. I know. I told myself Mom was grieving. He swallowed hard. I never realized she was teaching all of us how to treat you. Daniel suddenly pushed back his chair. He walked around the table until he stood beside me. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then he did something I never expected. He hugged me. Not awkwardly, not politely, like family. I'm sorry, Claire. His voice shook. I believed things about you that were never true. I hugged him back. You were a kid. I should have questioned it sooner. So should all of us. Agent Morales closed the file. Since the property has been recovered, and there was no completed sale, this matter will remain primarily civil. Relief spread across the room. Justice had been served without destroying what was left of the family. As everyone slowly gathered their belongings, Evelyn stopped beside me. I don't expect forgiveness. I looked at her tired face. You won't receive it today. She nodded. I understand. But I paused. If you're truly sorry, spend whatever years you have left honoring your daughter's memory without trying to erase mine. She began to cry again. This time, I believed those tears were real. Spring arrived quietly that year. The maple trees outside our house filled with new leaves. Lily was counting down the days until summer vacation, and for the first time in months, our home felt peaceful again. Not perfect, peaceful. I'd learned there was a difference. Some wounds don't disappear. They simply stop bleeding. A month after the meeting at the Veterans Resource Center, Daniel called. Claire, he said. Are you busy Saturday? I don't think so. I'd like you to come by. Everything okay? There was a short pause. I've got something I'd like to ask you. When I arrived at his house, Robert was already there grilling hamburgers in the backyard. While Lily chased bubbles with the neighbors' children, Daniel met me on the front porch. He looked nervous. I've been thinking a lot. I can tell. He smiled sheepishly. I spent years believing family was something you inherited. And now, I think it's something people earn. He reached into his pocket and held out a small army insignia. I was promoted again last week. I heard. Congratulations. Thank you. He took a deep breath. I'd like you to pin these on me. For a moment I couldn't speak. In the army, a promotion pinning isn't just another ceremony. It's deeply personal. The person placing those new insignia on your uniform is someone you've chosen to honor your journey. You sure? I finally asked. He nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. As I carefully pinned the insignia onto his uniform, I remembered another ceremony only a few months earlier. The one where Lily had squeezed my hand terrified, while everything around us seemed perfect. How different life looked now. When I finished, Daniel hugged me. This time he didn't call me Claire. Thanks, Mom. One simple word, 6 years late, exactly when it mattered most. Across the yard, Robert quietly wiped a tear from his eye. Lily clapped her hands. I knew you'd say it someday. We all laughed. Even I did. A week later, I made one final trip to the Veterans Resource Center, not to file paperwork, not to recover evidence, to donate something. I placed certified copies of my service records, photographs, and the commander's recommendation letter into the museum archive. The original stayed safely with my family. The bronze star remained in its blue velvet case, resting in a small wooden box at home. Not because it proved I was brave, but because it reminded me that honor isn't something another person can steal. Before leaving, I noticed Evelyn arranging chairs for a veterans' luncheon. She had quietly begun volunteering there every week. When she saw me, she walked over. I still think about what I did every day, she admitted. I imagine you do. I can't change the past. No, but I can spend whatever time I have left doing something worthy of it. I looked around the room. Veterans laughed over coffee. Families shared stories. Young volunteers listened with genuine respect. Finally, I smiled. That's a good place to start. As I walked toward the parking lot, Lily slipped her hand into mine. Mom? Yes, sweetheart. I'm really glad I told you. I squeezed her hand, the same little hand that had squeezed mine on the day everything changed. So am I. Children often see what adults overlook. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet voice of an 8-year-old telling the truth when everyone else is looking the other way. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the people who've shown quiet courage in your own life. Share this story with someone who believes honesty, family, and forgiveness still matter. And if you'd like to hear more heartfelt stories about resilience, redemption, and the strength found in ordinary people, we'd be honored to have you subscribe and join us again. The end.